Welcome to the Open Apple podcast, where we celebrate the Apple II. Whether you're a long-time user, a nostalgic visitor, or a newcomer to the community, join us as we share news and memories of Steve Wozniak's most famous personal computer.
Hello and welcome to Open Apple. This is episode 60 for June 2016. I am your co-host, the first, Quinn Dunkey. And with me as always is co-host, the second, Mike McGinnis. How you doing, Mike?
I'm sweltering, Quinn. It's 90 degrees here.
90 degrees?
Yeah.
Wow, it's only June.
I know. It's not supposed to hit us until like late July or something like that. I don't know. Right about the time when everybody's going to KansasFest. Are you looking forward to that?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm getting ready as we speak. In fact, behind me I have a stack of chips and a stack of labels and a ROM burner, and I'm going to town because, as you may have heard, if you're on the KFest email list, which you should be if you listen to this show, I'm going to be selling my Apple IIc Plus upgrade ROM at KansasFest. So for a special low KansasFest price, because I don't have to do shipping or anything like that. So for $10, you too can own an Apple IIc Plus that does not have a weird beep. It has a regular Apple II sounding beep, and it defaults to 1 megahertz instead of 4. And so you can still switch to 4 if you want to for all your Apple Works and productivity needs. But most importantly, when you boot it up to play games, as most of us do, it will be nicely set to 1 megahertz, just like the good Lord intended.
Yeah, there's something just wrong about Lode Runner at 4 megahertz. It's too hard for me, I guess.
There really is, yes. Yeah, was 1 megahertz was good enough for Woz, and it's good enough for me too.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of KansasFest, we have with us, we don't normally have a lot of repeat guests on the show because most of them, avoid us after their appearance is over. But I think we've had Sean on now more than, I think, almost any other guest, maybe more. But what is in what is quickly becoming an annual tradition, we have with us Sean Fahey of the KansasFest organizing committee here to talk to us a little bit, and he'll probably hang out and do some news with us. So what do you say we get on with it, Quinn?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
Hi, I'm Bill Budge, and you're listening to the Open Apple Podcast.
All right, sitting down with us today is Sean Fahey, an Apple II community regular, local celebrity, and of course, integral to the KansasFest annual tradition. Welcome to the show, Sean. How you doing?
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Sean.
So, are you all geared up for KFest?
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We're putting on the final finishing touches of getting the conference ready. We've got about 70 people signed up for this year so far, same as last year. So it's going to be a big turnout, and we're trying to put together a few surprises to shake things up a little bit.
Awesome. So the turnout's been on the rise the past few years. Is that right?
Yes, the last 2 years have been significantly higher, and we seem to be kind of the past 2 years we're kind of at the 70 attendee mark, but before that it was 65, 68, and we've trended up since then. Before that we were at 45, 50. It just keeps getting a little bigger and bigger every year.
That's fantastic.
Without spoiling any of those surprises that you talked about, what sort of things can newcomers look forward to if they've never been to KansasFest before?
Well, there'll be the garage giveaway again this year, and it'll probably be a little bit bigger than normal because I got to make room in the garage. It's overflowing, so we're going to be bringing a lot more stuff, I think, than we normally do. Well, maybe 20% more if we can squeeze it into the big green truck. And the cookout this year, it's actually going to be catered, and we're going to have all of our usual great sessions that we have. We've got a lot of great prizes this year from our vendor community, which, if you don't mind, at some point in time into their show, I'd like to give a shout out to.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But first, how would one go about winning one of those prizes?
Well, we have different contests. As you know, we have the Hackfest prize, which is probably the biggest one. We have door design or door decorating contests, Bite the Bag, which is always fun to watch.
Bite the Bag? What is that?
Well, that's where people, they put a paper sack on the floor, and with only one part of your body touching the floor, you reach down and bite it with your teeth. And then as the round keeps getting more, as more people bite the bag, they tear off more of the bag. It gets lower and lower to the ground, and people have to do some amazing gymnastics usually to get it. I mean, literally, it becomes a little sliver of paper on the floor that people have to grab with their teeth.
I'm almost afraid to ask where the inspiration for that game came from.
I don't know. It's just been a KansasFest tradition for a long time, but there's a lot of people doing headfirst gainers into the floor and, and flopping, and it's fun to watch. So
awesome.
Yeah, and I can attest, having played that my first K-Fest a couple of years ago, that it is much, much harder than it sounds to get your face that close to the ground with only one part of your body touching the ground. Much harder than it sounds.
But there'll be some other contests and some wackiness. And like I said, we've got a lot of prizes to give away this year. So, you don't have to be the winner to win a prize, probably. We have second and third place prizes for a lot of our contests. And really, these prizes that we got this year are really amazing.
Great. Well, and I know that one of the high points of KansasFest, especially in recent years, has been the keynote. And of course, as announced on your webpage, this year's speaker is going to be Mike Harvey, publisher of Nibble magazine. And I know that he's been something of an elusive target for you guys in the past. Do you know how that came about this year?
Well, Mike gave a interview to Juice GS a while back, I think almost 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he's posted a lot of information about himself online. I think he felt that there was nothing really new to contribute, but I assured him that we would love to meet him in person, shake his hand, get autographs, love to hear his stories in person as far as his anecdotes in the publishing industry and Apple in general. And he said it was a great idea, and he's going to come on out.
I'm looking forward to that for sure.
So KansasFest officially starts on what date? Tuesday
it's the 20th, isn't it?
I don't have the calendar in front of me.
It's the 19th. Yeah, the 19th is the Tuesday. The 19th is the early arrival day. Nothing really official happens on that day. It was an extra day that was tacked on years ago because people wanted to arrive early. They wanted to have an extra day to socialize and hang out with their friends. So nothing really, like I said, nothing really official happens on the 19th, but 20th is the actual check-in day. That's when we have our initial activities. We go out to eat that night, do crazy things.
Okay. Now I'm looking at the webpage here, and it said that, of course, early bird registration has already ended by the time we're recording this. But does that mean people can still register, right?
Yeah. The registration rate goes up, I believe $55, but you can still register up until. I'd have to double check the website for the detail, and you can still order a T-shirt if you want up until, I believe, July or June 22nd, and then that gets locked in.
Okay, and that's for full room and board through Sunday the 24th, and that covers meals and sessions and everything, right?
You're right.
Okay, that's actually a really good price.
One of the best things about K-Fest, I think, is the price. It's hard to, you can't beat that for any kind of conference, to have all of your lodging and meals and everything covered for that kind of price for that amount of time. It's pretty amazing. It's probably the cheapest vacation I take every year, for sure.
Yep.
Well, we try to keep it reasonable for everybody, and we're also looking for other ways that we can provide value to attendees.
Okay. Now, speaking of providing value, you had mentioned the prizes earlier, and who provides them? And are we talking just like a network card, or you're giving away a fully stuffed Apple IIgs? Where on the scale do your prizes fit? Well,
there's a spectrum. Mostly it's peripherals and add-ons for Apple IIs, but there's also some books and other tchotchkes that we're going to be giving away, thanks to our generous vendors.
Okay. Did you want to mention any of them?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to thank Mike Whalen, Sierra Saunter, Ken Gagney, Charles Mangan, Mark Pilgrim, Rich Dreher, Steve Wyrick, Chris Torrance, Bill Martins and Brian Weiser, Glenn Jones, Plemon with A2 Heaven, Mike Harvey, Andrew and Ivan Hogan, Gabriella Gorla, and Alex Cross. They've all generously donated prizes to KansasFest this year.
Great. And of course, to register for all this, you can go to kansasfest.org and sign up now. There is one question, one thing that you mentioned at the very beginning that I think maybe deserves a little bit more investigation, and that's the Sean's Garage giveaway. What is that, and how did you come up with it?
Well, when I got back into the Apple II community, I started collecting hardware for myself, adding to my collection. And then before too long, though, I started running into people who wanted to get rid of more stuff than I possibly needed. And so I started collecting it and dispensing it to other Apple II users. There were a couple of Sunday school and kindergarten programs that still used Apple IIs that depended on me for equipment. So I would keep a lot of this stuff in stock. And then but it got to the point where I had, at any given time, I'd have 50 or 60 Apple IIes and maybe as many Apple II GSs in the garage at a time. And it was just getting too much. And there was no way I was going to use them all. And my wife was not very pleased with the situation. So I just started taking them I started having the people from KansasFest come down to my garage. And whatever I got for free, I would give away for free. And now it's gotten to the point where people contact me, if they're downsizing or getting rid of their collection for some reason, or unfortunately someone's passed away. They send me their things, or I go pick them up in some circumstances, and I bring them to KansasFest and redistribute everything to the community.
Free of charge?
I take donations because it does cost money to store things in the storage shed. I don't put anything in the garage anymore except my stuff, but I rent a storage shed. Plus there's, gas and hotels if we travel somewhere to go pick stuff up. But if it's free, if you want to give me a donation, that's great. But otherwise you take it, it's yours. Wow.
That's a really good deal, especially since there's a lot of that stuff that, when you see, and you can go on Flickr. I think Jason Scott at his Flickr username is Text Files. He took some really great pictures of it last year. You can see some of the equipment that's there for the taking, and it's not cheap, junky stuff. This is, really great stuff if you want to start a collection or if you're looking to build out what you have.
Well, people like Michael Mann, when he sent me his collection, it literally took up the nearly half of a moving van.
Wow.
And his collection has been giving now for going on 3 years. We have not finished getting rid of everything he sent us.
Wow, so that's amazing.
We kind of mix it in with the other things that we get from other people. Earlier this spring, we went down to Texas to visit Hugh Hood, and he sent a bunch of stuff back up with us. And we've been to Florida. Jamie Stevens was nice enough to give us a ton of old vintage Macintosh stuff. So that's something else that will be there this year. Is not just Apple II. There's going to be a lot of old Mac stuff as well.
Wow, that's really great. And who knows? Maybe they'll even be an Atari there, Boo Atari.
You never know.
Yeah, last year there was a Coco 3 on the table. That's a pretty desirable item.
Anyway, it's going to be a lot of cool stuff, and the really nice thing is that it's not just software, it's not just books, not just magazines. It's everything that everybody's collected over the years, and I don't think you can go through the garage giveaway and not find something you want.
That's for sure. Yeah, and I think what's really great about it is that it's keeping the stuff in the community. It's keeping the stuff in the hands of people that really appreciate it and people that are gonna, love it and take good care of it and do cool stuff with it. So instead of just shoveling it onto eBay or even worse into a landfill, I think it's kind of a great community service, I think.
Well, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely no naughty showing up and shoveling the stuff right onto eBay.
Exactly. That's frowned upon.
Yes.
So for the more sort of experienced KFest goers, my understanding is that also this year there's a bit of a focus on fewer sessions and more free time. Is that true?
Yeah, last year, we kind of went for broke, and I think we overscheduled, and we had some feedback that the pace was just a little too relentless as far as the sessions went. And so we've kind of dialed it back to something a little more reasonable. And we're also going to try to have more hands-on time with various sessions, so that people who have repair needs, they can have someone there to help them with that.
Well, in fact, don't you even have isn't there like a soldering session this year?
Yeah, I believe Ultimate Micro is going to participate in that. And of course, James Littlejohn and Charles Mangan and a bunch of others, they usually tend to jump in there and help with that as well.
I always look forward to, as much as I love the informational sessions, the hands-on ones are always my favorites, because not only do I get to work on equipment, but I get to work around people who are more knowledgeable and experienced than I am, in case I have questions, and it's a great chance if you have that Apple II that has a fried motherboard or something, and you just afraid of the soldering iron. This is a great place to bring it and get it fixed.
That and the repairs you do yourself are very satisfying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and every year there's always someone's power supply that lets the magic smoke out, so it's nice to know that there's people there that can fix it on the spot for you.
True enough.
I think that's all the questions I've got. Shall we move on into the news?
Sure. Sean, you want to hang out and do some news with us?
Yeah, I got one question for Quinn, though.
Yeah, fire away.
Is the setting to run the 2C Plus at 1 megahertz, is that the Carrington setting?
Well, it would be, except that he doesn't have a show by that name anymore. So now it's just the normal setting.
Shots fired.
He claims he has more episodes of that show in the can, just waiting to be aired, and yet it's been multiple years. So I'm not holding out hope that Mr. Carrington will be back on the air with an Apple II. But hopefully all of this teasing will goad him into action, because it was a very good show.
It may be old, but there's still news. Apple II news.
Okay, well, as usual, it's time for Apple II news.
Yeah, we got a bit of a theme this month, kind of a clone theme, if you like. We'll kick that off with looks like a Staff C1 Apple II clone on oldcomputer.com. Mike, this looks like your find. What's going on here?
It is, and where did that go? It's not showing up on my list anymore. That's because I'm looking in the wrong place. It's the heat that's killing my IQ points, I swear. Over on Old Computer with no E. .com. There's an article on the Staff C1 Apple II clone. This is not one that I had seen before. It sort of looks like it's in a maybe a Franklin 2100 box-ish sort of, but beige. Have you ever seen anything like this, Quinn or Sean?
No, I sure haven't. There seems to be different kinds of clones. There's ones that look exactly like Apple II Pluses, but with no badging. And then there's ones that look like a lower budget version, like they couldn't afford as fancy a case, so they put it in something a little bit cheaper. And this one is somewhere in the middle, I guess.
I don't think I've heard of it.
Okay. This one, they say it looks like it's an Apple II Plus clone and it boots up. But when they power it on, it says Staff C1 instead of the normal Apple II ROM message at the top of the screen. Interesting.
Yeah, this is a very interesting one. The Apple II Plus is just so imminently clonable that it's not surprising that there are gajillions of them. I mean, it really was just off-the-shelf parts and a couple of EEPROMs that are easily dumped and flashed. So, not shocking. And, of course, at the time, the company was fairly small and didn't have the army of lawyers that they do now. So it's hard to put a stop to this sort of thing.
And this article itself is actually really great because they've got a series. They tore the thing down, pulled it apart, and there's a number of really detailed, high-resolution photos, so you can see what's really going on inside there.
Yeah, this was the first time I'd seen this blog, actually, and it looks like a really nice one. He takes really great photos, and he has kind of a unique editing style with the photos. He kind of puts them all on a white background, and it's really nice. This is a good read, this one.
Absolutely. What's next?
Well, if you don't want to play with real hardware in clone form, you can play with it in yet another format on your modern machine. Looks like someone's got a JavaScript Apple II emulator, kind of like JSMS, but this one is a Chrome extension. So you can run your Apple II alongside anything else in your browser anytime you want. So yet another way to emulate your Apple II. Have you tried this one out yet, Mike?
Yeah, I've been playing with it a little bit. It's well written. And like you said, these things just keep getting smaller and tighter and more portable. It's gone from you don't even have to go over to Archive anymore to do this. I wonder if this is similar to that, or if that's. I know that Jason did a lot of the work on that project in JavaScript as well, but it's fairly functional. You've got the options. You can pause it during operation, look at the code running in the background. It's got an automatic disk image loader, so you don't have to be typing in command prompt thingies. And this one is available in the Chrome extension store. It's Apple II JS by Wagner. I assume that's how you pronounce it. Alvarenga.
Interesting. Now, is this an Apple II Plus emulator, 2E? What are we looking at here?
It doesn't say. It just says Apple II JS, and I haven't found any option to switch between models of Apple II, but I haven't actually looked at that part of it too much. I've just been having too much fun loading up disk images in my browser going, cool, and then loading another one and going, cool. So,
I think that's what a lot of us do with these emulators.
Right.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I guess it always amazes me when someone does this sort of thing, but I guess in hindsight, I guess it shouldn't be amazing since, 1 megahertz is like a rounding error in today's clock speeds, but it is sort of remarkable that what was an impressive piece of machinery that was an entire computer, not so long ago, is now just something you can run as an accessory in a browser. Pretty remarkable, I think.
Indeed.
All right. Well, so we have probably this next item is my favorite one on the show, I think, and I'm actually really bummed that I missed out on this. This is the Lode Runner board game. Now, I heard about this originally on a different podcast.
Boo.
Yeah. I want to say it was the RCR, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the RCR gang dug this one up. And it's pretty amazing, this thing. It was only released in Japan, which is why I bet none of our audience members have heard of the Lode Runner board game. But there was one, and it was only released in Japan. It's incredibly rare, and a very, very nice copy of it came up on eBay recently, and it had a buy it now of $130. And I was fully prepared, honestly, to pull the trigger on it at that price. And I was playing, I stalled a little bit, I procrastinated a little bit, and I went back and looked at it the other day, and it was already gone.
Oh.
And yeah, I was bummed because I thought to play this at KFest would have been amazing. So I don't know who bought it, but if it's someone in our audience, I hope you're coming to KFest with this thing. It's in terrific condition. All the parts are there, and it's probably not especially fun because these video game themed board games were never especially good. But yeah, it would be just awesome to play a Lode Runner board game at KFest. So I hope someone out there bought it and will bring it. But if not, enjoy it because that is really something special, I think.
Sean, have you seen that before?
No, I'd never seen it before. It was new to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a neat thing. All right, well, from the old to the new once again, some of you may be familiar with Kerbal Space Program, which is a really, really excellent educational game on modern machines. And I think it's, I don't know, shareware or something. Are you familiar with KSP, Mike?
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay, so it's free to download and play, I think, but maybe it's donation based or something, I forget. But it's sort of kind of like an educational kind of thing. But it's really fun. You control this sort of race of of little green men that's trying to get into space, and you have to kind of manage their economy and design their spaceships and so on to help them out. Great fun. Someone decided that wasn't cool enough, and they ported a version of it to the Apple II. And at first glance, this seems like a fun gimmick, like someone makes a title screen for a theoretical, retro port of a modern game. We've seen that kind of thing. This is something else. This appears to actually be a full game, complete with fake crack screen, which I found hilarious. And the video that we're going to link to is from Hackaday, and I assume it's the author narrating this video, but the shtick is that he is tired of the bugs in the real KSP, and so he sets his time machine to go forward in time to when they've patched all those bugs, and sets it to the past by mistake, and goes back in time and ends up playing KSP on his Apple II. And so then he sort of narrates it in that sort of style, and I assume he's the author of it, but he kind of walks through a bunch of the features of it, plays through a few missions, and it's really quite well done, I have to say. It's got nice transitions, some nice graphics, looks pretty full-featured and playable, so it's a surprisingly complete game, which kind of came out of nowhere. Usually when someone's working on a game like this, we kind of hear about it for a while before it comes out, so not so in this case. Did you happen to try this out, Mike?
I've downloaded it. I haven't had a chance to load it up into my JavaScript Chrome extension yet, but I'm sure I will.
Yeah. All right. How about you, Sean? Have you tried this one?
No, I haven't had time yet.
All right. Well, it looks like a fun little toy to play with, and it makes me want to go play the real one even more. But meaning to get back to that. All right. So last month on the show, we talked about Steve Chamberlain over at Big Mess of Wires and the DB19 saga. And we talked about how he had, he's the maker, of course, of the Floppy Emu, which is an awesome solid-state drive emulator for old Macs and also Apple IIs and possibly more things in the future. And he was struggling to keep producing his device because the DB19 connector has been long out of production. Nobody uses it anymore, and nobody makes it anymore. And so he decided to finally bite the bullet and just go ahead and have them made. So he went and arranged a group buy with some other retro computing fans from like the Atari group. I believe the Atari ST used these. The Next, I believe, used some of these. So there were some other machines out there that did use DB19s in a couple of places. So he rounded up all of those people that he could and got everyone together for a group buy. And there's a great blog post on his blog that we'll link to telling the story of this. He managed to find some factory in Hong Kong that would make these things for him, and had to wire an obscene amount of money to them. He had to convince his bank to even let him do that because the whole thing seemed really sketchy. It's a great story. And he ends up finally with 10,000 of these things on his doorstep, which was the smallest order he could get.
Whoa.
So yeah, he has probably the world's supply at this point of DB19 connectors, 10,000 of them. Some of them, I'm sure, are going to other vendors or to people from the group buy, but no doubt most of them have stayed with him. So if you want to buy a DB19, I'm sure he would be thrilled to sell you one. But it's pretty cool to see these brand new connectors living again. Before commenting, I would recommend reading his article because he answers all of the common questions that everybody has about this issue. Number one being, can't you 3D print them or something like that? And no, you can't. 3D printers are nowhere near that good. Can't you cut down, DB25s? Well, yes, you can, but they look like crap and you can't, make a commercial product like that. And, by the way, here's 5 sites I found that sell them. Well, no, they don't actually. It just looks like they do. Electronics stockists list things they don't actually have all the time, both because either they're forwarding orders to someone else who also doesn't have them, or, they just put the thing up there in case someone makes a big order and then maybe they'll try to find them, so it's just kind of the sketchy way that online electronic components are sold. If you Google this, it'll look like you can buy them lots of places, but you can't. They don't actually have them. Great read. I recommend it. And nice to know there's some DB19s in the world again.
More than you'll ever need.
Yeah. I do wonder if he hooked up with Nishida Radio for this, because Nishida Radio has been kind of making his own connectors I think he's 3D printing one piece of them, like the backing, and then setting the pins into it, and then like soldering it to a PCB. He's kind of been, if you order one of his drive adapters, you get something kind of like that. So I don't know if maybe he'll be able to access these as well, or how that's going. But I think Plamen in Bulgaria is also involved in this, perhaps. So, more connectors in the world for our Apple IIs. Always a good thing.
That's dedication.
It really is. Yeah. I think he, on his blog, he did the math on how many of his floppy emus he would have to sell to pay for this. And it's not likely he's going to get that money back, but it was quite an adventure for all involved.
He'll be leaving to his children in his will.
Yeah. He's going to be buried with 6,000 remaining DB19s.
And his family will be resentful. This is what he left us.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, looks like 4 a.m. is back in the news again. Talk to us about this one, Mike.
Yep. So 4 a.m. as we've talked about many times on this program, has been busy cracking and posting his work all over the Internet Archive. You can go over to Internet Archive, to the archive.org, and there's his collection. Their collection is available to look at. And the great thing about it is that in addition to just posting clean cracks, the software itself, there's also step-by-step instructions on how these cracks were achieved, which is always a great learning experience if you're into that sort of thing. Well, it turns out that in the Broderbund game Gumball, which I remember hearing about, I don't think I ever played it. Did either of you play Gumball?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a favorite of mine. I loved it.
Okay. Well, I think you're one of the few, the proud, I guess. But there was an Easter egg buried deep within in the code there, and 4am discovered it and posted it on Twitter. And within a few hours, he was congratulated by the original author, Robert A. Cook. How cool is that?
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, only in the modern social media universe would such a thing happen, I think.
Yep. I think we need to have both of them on and interview them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if you have not yet been exposed to 4am's crack reports or, seen what he's been up to, this is the perfect time to go dive into that rabbit hole, because this is, I think, the peak of what him and partner in crime, Cucumba, have been doing. It's really an astonishing crack. Reading through this thing, I feel like there must have been more copy protection code on that disk than actual game code, because there's just layer after layer after layer of obfuscation and encryption. And I think they said 7 different read-write track sector routines. Whoa. And using whole blocks of code for encryption keys, and running code on the stack, running code in the text page and the graphics page, running code from the input buffer. Like, just every trick that you've ever heard anywhere is just piled on in layers. Running code off by 1 byte to fool disassemblers. Every trick in the book. Lots of self-modifying code. Lots of checksumming and XORing of things, and it took them. It took them quite a while to unravel all this. And this is really kind of a unique write-up, because they also include a long section of their chat log as they were, 4am and Cucumba were sort of working on this together, and they were working back and forth on this to undo all these layers. And so it's really kind of cool to see the process. And, this is for anyone who isn't familiar with kind of the general project here. They're preserving all this software in a clean form, which means no cracked screen. Lots of these games were cracked before back in the day, but, they always have some obnoxious cracked screen on them. And frequently, to unravel all this copy protection, they end up modifying the disk significantly, because you can't keep it in the original form and still be copyable. So they end up taking chunks out of the game to make that easier for them to do. So there was a couple of major cracks of Gumball out there at the time. One was just the game, and I think missing some of the levels. And then another one was the game and like one of the cutscenes. But the full game has this big animated intro and multiple cutscenes and all this other stuff that, that was cut out of the cracks for ease of use. So, that's all being preserved now. And they're also, of course, cracking a lot of educational software and business software that didn't tend to get cracked back at the time. So that's all being preserved. And it's wonderful to see. I had one of the crappier cracks of Gumball in my collection, so I had no idea there was these amazing little cutscenes in it that I had no idea were there. This amazing animated intro I had no idea was there. 4AM got me to test out the 2C Plus version of it that they make. 'Cause the other thing they're doing is they're making a lot of these games ProDOS loadable. So they have a version of it that loads in ProDOS on a 3.5-inch floppy. So I tried that out on my 2C Plus, and that worked perfectly. And I lost most of a Saturday to playing Gumball. Thanks a lot for that. This is definitely if you only read one crack write-up this year, this is the one to read. And I can't promise that you will follow all of it. I certainly didn't, but it's fun to see the process anyway. And it gives you, I think, new respect for the cat and mouse game that was going on between the crackers and the copy protectors at the time.
All that for Gumball.
It's a good game, actually. It's really fun. It's the kind of game that nowadays would be like a free-to-play mobile game, and you would download it and play it for 5 minutes, in line for the theater kind of thing. But it's a lot of fun. It really is. It's a fun kind of contraption on the screen to watch, and you're controlling these little gates to drop the gumballs into the right colored bins and stuff. So yeah, it's fun. There's more strategy to it than it seems at first, and so I do actually recommend people give it a shot.
Sounds like Gumball was actually just an excuse to put this other exercise out there in the world on how much copy protection can we shove onto one diskette.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to maybe we can get Robert Cook on the show to talk about that and, why there was so much copy protection in this game. Yeah, there's more copy protection in this than like big budget games of the time, like the Ultimas or the Origin games like Knights of Legend and Mobius. I mean, this little Gumball game has, probably 3 times the copy protection on it that any of those did. So yeah, there must be a story there.
All right. Well, we have one more item, I think, and this is for the Ultimate Micro is hard at work. Henry and Anthony, of course, hard at work in their labs, and this time they've come up with the RamWorks 3 clone kit. And actually, for this one, Sean, I'm going to defer to you. What do you know about this?
Well, they took the RamWorks 3 design and they modernized it, reduced the chip count significantly on it to make it a little less expensive and a little easier for them to program. Basically, uses a lot less power, but it's now a 4 meg card. Wow.
Okay. And it looks like they're going to be doing something at KansasFest. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, they're going to have during the SolderFest session, you can pre-order a card or one of their power supply units. Then they'll deliver it to KansasFest, where you and under their watchful eye, you get to assemble your own card or power supply.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it is there.
Nice. Yeah, Ultimate Micro is doing some awesome stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing all their new toys at K-Fest this year.
Yeah, we'll have a link to that particular item in the show notes, and it looks like that kit will cost you $99 US.
Nice. Very cool. Actually, you know what? If you don't mind, I'd like to circle back to that Gumball story one more time.
Sure.
We actually left out one of the interesting elements of it, which is that as part of the cracking process, they found an Easter egg in the game.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. In fact, the title of the article is 33 Years to Find an Easter Egg. It turns out there was a hidden screen they found in the crack, and they were able to reverse engineer how to activate that screen in the game. And there's a message from the author explaining not only that the Easter egg in the game itself, but it's the start of a series of Easter eggs that spans multiple games. So the message from the author that you find in Gumball instructs you to type the phrase Zodware into some other game. And that's all it says. So the Twitterverse is now aflutter trying to figure this out. And the latest rumor I heard is that it might actually be an Atari 800 game that has this other phrase in it. People have scoured the credits in Gumball, the staff of Broderbund, looking for clues to who this Zodware might refer to or what game it might be referring to. So there appears to be a chain of at least 2. There's at least 2 links in this chain of Easter eggs that span games, and I don't think I've heard of such a thing, except maybe there's running gag Easter eggs in like the Ultimas and things like that. But this might be the first I've heard of where a genuine hidden kind of scavenger hunt that spans multiple titles, possibly even on multiple platforms, which is really astonishing. So if that turns out to be the case. So we'll keep you posted on this, but this is definitely a story to follow online. See if someone can figure out what Zodware refers to. Paul Hagstrom tweeted the other day, actually, I thought it was funny, the phrase Zodware now has results on Google, which it definitely did not before. So that's Z0DWARE. All caps, of course. So that phrase now has Google results, which it definitely did not before, which is pretty amusing. Carry on, Cucumber and 4am with your good works.
That's pretty amazing. I've heard of messages that software developers have put in on those disks, like taunting pirates and things like that, but never anything this elaborate or complex.
Yeah, I think Easter eggs probably got their start in the early days of like the Atari 2600 games when the engineers weren't allowed to take credit for their games because they were afraid of other companies hiring them away. So they were required to be anonymous, and the engineers would revolt by hiding their name in the game somewhere. I think that's probably how it started, and then it kind of evolved into actual. Sometimes there'd be rants about management, or sometimes there'd be hidden mini games or other things. This might be one of the high points of Easter eggs as a tradition, I think.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for the news, Mike, unless you've got any other hidden items for me.
Nope. Sean, you got anything for us?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
All right. Well, we got a few eBay items this month, so let's roll on into those.
Look, rare! Steve Jobs. Look what we found on eBay.
So in keeping with our clone theme for this month, we've got Mike went a little crazy and apparently has been typing Apple II clone into eBay a lot. So we got a whole list of really interesting Apple II clones, and it'd be fun to kind of go through them. I guess, well, let's get the elephant out of the room first. There was another Apple I on eBay. It went for $60,000. That's what everybody's wondering.
Get out your debit cards, everybody. They're coming down in price.
They are, yeah. They definitely seem to have peaked, because it wasn't so long ago they were flirting with $1 million, and now we're at a measly 60,000. So that's I don't know about you, but I found that in my couch yesterday. So
this one ended up for after 60 bids, selling for $60,300. It was described as owned by the original owner and his family for 39 years, presumed to have been purchased in May of 77, which is kind of late, but and that was based on a date written on the cassette interface board manual. Looks like all of the boards and manuals and everything and boxes were complete and present. So definitely cheaper than those $1 million units that were selling not so long ago.
I think after fees, they're going to feel kind of bummed.
Yeah, well, I wonder, I'm sure they were, of course, hoping for more, and I do wonder why they listed it on eBay. I mean, that's a big ticket item. I would think you'd go to Christie's or something.
It's been a while since I've seen an Apple I on eBay. I think the last time was there was an Apple employee who died, and it was a broken unit, and that one sold for more than this. It does look like there was a modification on maybe a prototype project in the little prototyping area was started and then clipped off because all the wires are still there, but they don't connect to anything. It does have both the 6502 and the 6820 chip are the original, or I guess I don't know if they're all original, but they're definitely the white ceramic ones, which are much harder to find. So, yeah, surprising that it went for as little as it did.
Yeah, that is. Personally, I would have gotten out the Hacko and desoldered those little chunks of wire. Yeah. It would have been very easy to make that area look unused. I don't know why they didn't bother, but
looks like a little white octopus on the Apple One.
Yeah. But then again, I also would not list a $60,000 item on eBay, so I guess to each their own. All right, well, now that we've beat that dead horse, let's move on to the much more interesting Apple II clones. And we should mention, actually, if you need any more reasons to come to KFest this year, one of our KFest regulars, will be bringing his recently acquired Pravets Bulgarian Apple II clone. So that's been talked about quite a bit on the Apple II Enthusiasts Facebook group. And I know myself and many others are very excited to see it. So come on out to see that. If you've ever wondered what Eastern Europe was up to in the 70s and 80s, they were busy cloning Apple II Pluses. Not only Eastern Europe, but South America. First one on our list here is a Brazilian 2E clone called the Micro Digital TK3000. Now, this one to me is kind of one of the kind of rank and file, I guess, for lack of a better term, 2 Plus clones. There's a lot of these where it's just sort of, it looks like a 2 Plus with the badge missing, or, it just looks like a 2 Plus in a crappier case. And there's nothing especially special about it, I guess. Is that your take on these, Mike?
Yeah, I think that back in the 80s, Brazil was one of those areas of the world that was having a hard time importing electronics from the United States, and so hobbyists were forced to come up with their own. And usually, what happened was somebody would smuggle one home, a real one home from a trade show in the United States, and they would reverse engineer it and come up with their own models that were similar in functionality, and they were far enough away from the not so long arm of the United States copyright enforcement or patent enforcement, something like that. And this is what you ended up getting. And I know that this company, Microdigital, made a number of clones. I think this one is they call it the TK3002E. It's an Apple IIe clone, but I know they made a 2 Plus and a few other items that were very popular in South America.
Yeah, the 2E clones are a little more rare because there is a little bit more reverse engineering required. A 2 Plus, you could literally buy off the shelf parts from, Fry's and build one at the time. But the 2E was a little tougher. That is interesting. And a lot of them, like this Brazilian one, are so blatant that it looks pretty clear like they just, in fact, used the case of a 2 Plus for their own molds. They probably had tooling made from a case that they smuggled out of the country, because it looks exactly like a 2 Plus, except the badge is missing. There's even the little recess where the badge should be. They didn't even bother to put their own badge in there like some of the clones do. So, but other than that, it's pretty bland. The next one is one that I think a lot of us have heard of because the name is so on the nose. It's the Pineapple Apple II clone. A lot of them have fruit puns. That's a popular theme for
Shocking.
Apple II. Yeah, shockingly for Apple II clones. But this one was probably the cleverest of them. This is kind of the other category of 2 Plus clones where they tried to make the case look different and hopefully interesting in its own way, but also clearly it's a little bit lower budget than the Apple II case is, so something a little bit easier to make. But this is a nice example of a pineapple, so worth looking at.
Sean, I know that you have a lot of unusual and one-of-a-kind items and even a few clones. Have you seen a pineapple before?
Yes, I've had a couple of them in the past. I don't have one right now, but I do have a TK3000.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
So I'm looking at the pictures that they have in the listing here, and even the pineapple font is sort of similar to that modern Tectura font that Apple used before Macintosh and the later 2Es. And the pineapple itself is, I think that's even like the 6 colors sort of like spread across a pineapple instead of an apple.
Yeah.
So, and there's some shots of it with the lid off, and the board looks identical to like one of those Apple IIe maintenance boards that they would swap out if your board went bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now correct me if I'm wrong. I think Pineapple was one of the cloners that actually did get shut down by Apple, and I wonder if this is why. I mean, they were definitely not shy about what they were doing. It was almost like they were making fun of Apple in their clone, like stealing the color scheme, and the board layout is identical. Like they were not trying to hide what they were doing at all.
We dare you to come get us, Apple, and they did.
Yeah. So the next one is just listed in our notes as unknown clone, which I think is fair because I looked at this listing and could not figure out what this thing is. It looks like one of the Brazilian clones or one of the other sort of generic ones where the case is cloned 1-for-1, but there are no markings of any sort that I can find on this thing that identify it. Were you able to deduce what this is, Mike?
Which one are you looking at, Quinn?
It's just labeled unknown clone, Apple II clone with expansion cards.
I had the Korean one up. Oh yeah, look at that. This is I'm pretty sure that's just an Apple II case where a 2 Plus case where they pried the label off. The little, the little pop-up light, in the lower case is sort of the raised one, but it's a different cover for the light.
Yeah.
There's no, I can't find any sort of manufacturing information on this thing. It even has like a generic 128K RAM card, but there's no manufacturing information on that. It does have a grappler too, but other than that, I can't really find anything about this at all. This one is currently for sale still. It's up to a buy it now price of $219. If I had the money, I'd almost put it down just to see what this thing is.
Yeah, and it says 128K, but it's not a 2E, so that's deceptive there a little bit. It does have a 128K card in it, but it's a strange one. This thing, I don't know, it's a mystery. I'd like to at least know what country it's from. That might be illuminating. All right, well, so moving to the other side of the pond now to Korea. We've got one from that side of things. What's this one about, Mike?
So this one's called the Alpha 2 made by Dong Kailing Computer. Is that one, Sean? Have you heard of the Alpha 2 from Korea?
It's probably a Micom or similar clone. The one you were just talking about with the 128K, that's a version of the Micom.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Okay. So they're cloning each other.
Yeah. There was a kind of an arms race between Korea and Taiwan and parts of China that they were producing these Apple II boards, and they were shipping them through Canada.
Oh, interesting.
So this one, this one's kind of dirty. Looks like it hasn't led the easiest life, but they do have some nice shots of the motherboard with the cover off, but that's sort of where the similarities, at least visually, end. There's a few more slots in this, I think. No, they're not. It's labeled Dolphin 2 on the motherboard, and there's a CG ROM in a weird place. Also the writing, the silkscreen writing on the motherboard is actually sort of upside down, so the bottom of the letters are facing the slots rather than the front of the keys. Interesting. This one's currently listed for $500. Buy it now.
Is it from the Computer Museum?
Actually, this is the username is CCDAI1. It's got 329 feedback's all positive. So,
yeah. Is there any indication that it does any attempt at Korean characters, or is it just a regular keyboard?
It looks like a regular English keyboard. I don't see anything on there that would indicate that this is not a completely English machine. They've got some screenshots of the thing running, and the feedback, the input is in English, and the syntax error messages are in English. So and it boots up with an Apple II sign or Apple II logo at the top.
Oh, is that right? It says Apple II at the top.
Yep.
Huh. Wow, that's blatant. So they just ripped the ROM and dumped it directly.
Yeah, it looks like it.
That's interesting. Wow. Okay, that's pretty bold as well. To not even bother changing 5 characters in the ROM. There seems to be certain countries where the 2 clones really took hold and made an impact in the culture. And Korea is definitely one of them, as evidenced by the recent work of Ian Kim over there, making some pretty cool new hardware boards that we've talked about a lot on the show. And, of course, the other big one is Bulgaria. There were a lot of Bulgarian clones by all accounts. The big one seems to be the Pravits. So we have a couple of those listed here as well, which we'll link to in the show notes. Anything special about these, Mike, that you want to talk about?
Well, we'll start with the first one. I've seen a few Pravitses. I don't think I've seen one with a case design like this. It looks almost more like one of the old style typewriters, or sort of bred with the TRS-80. This one's called the Pravits 82. It's an Apple II Plus clone. And internally, it does have it has the light green slots, but the board layout looks pretty similar to that of an Apple II Plus.
Yeah, the Pravitses look like they tried to come up with a bit of their own case style to make them look different, but still have room physically for the same sets of cards. So it's got kind of a flatter keyboard, but kind of a boxy rear section. So they still have the same volume for the card slots. So interesting machines. Looking forward to seeing one at KFest. Next, we've got another unknown clone. This one looks like it's a 2 Plus clone, but it looks like more like a 2E Platinum case. imagine if a 2E Platinum had been backed over by a truck and then left in the garden for a couple of years, it might look like this.
Wow.
Sort of a sad copy of a 2E Platinum case, but in the sense that it's got a numeric keypad and it's kind of that style. But it's, I don't know. I don't know anything about this one either. It looks like, does it have a CPM card or it runs CPM according to the listing? Do you know what's going on there?
It looks like another TK. I don't know if it's the 3000, but it does have the keypad, like as you mentioned, but all the keys look like the Apple II Plus style. So it's sort of a weird melding there.
Yeah.
Sean, do you know anything about that particular model of TK from Brazil?
I can't say that I know much about I know various motherboards were used in that case. That case was a popular aftermarket case that you could buy back in the day. It was advertised in some of the magazines that we all subscribed to.
Okay.
I've got one of them in storage.
That's really interesting. Okay, I didn't realize that was an aftermarket case that you could buy. Okay, the motherboard on this one is interesting. It's got a 6502 and a Z80 on it, so apparently it's designed to run CPM as well, although the seller isn't clear on that. The seller just says it should run CPM as well, but for whatever reason, it does have both CPUs on the motherboard, so it's definitely a unique design, this one.
And you can see this is from Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and in Canada back in the day, you could buy all the parts and pieces to build your own Apple II compatible. What the Canadian authorities would do, and the United States authorities, the customs officials, for these Chinese companies that were trying to ship in, or I should say Taiwanese companies, they were trying to ship in entire systems. They would get blocked because they were infringing on copyrights. So what they would do is they'd ship in the parts. You could order the parts out of a catalog and then assemble them yourself and have a complete system.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. All right, so this next one I kind of like. It's an Intertech. I had not seen one of these before, but it's kind of a nice looking one. It reminds me of like one of the British 8-bits. It's got that kind of cartoony, friendly color scheme and style to it. Have you ever seen one of these, Sean? An Intertech?
No, that one's brand new to me. I haven't seen that one before.
Okay, so this is apparently an Intertech System 4, also with a Z80. See, I'm looking for, there's a kind of a crappy photo of the motherboard here. It looks like, so this one looks like a regular Apple II board with a Z80 card in it. So it's not like the other one, which had both CPUs right next to each other on the motherboard, which is really interesting. So this thing, looks like a straight up Apple II clone. Someone's just put a CPM card in it. It's kind of a neat looking machine. It looks like it's not in great condition. The spacebar is at a distressing angle. I suspect that something is broken there. It's hard enough to repair keyboards on Apple IIs, never mind obscure clones. This one appears to be Korean as well. It's got a kind of an awesome 80s logo on it, which caught my eye. It's got kind of a sci-fi kind of look to it. But the logos appear to be stickers that are applied crooked. So I guess quality control was not super high on their list of priorities. I kind of like this one. What do you think, Mike?
It's an interesting design. It sort of looks like a mashup, maybe a little bit TRS-80-ish, a little bit Apple IIc, a little bit Apple II. They kind of got creative there. Yeah, I like it. Points for creativity, guys.
Yeah, I feel like there's a little bit of BBC Micro in there, maybe.
Yep. It's got 2 Franklin cards in it.
Very interesting stuff. And all right, so let's see, what's the next? Oh yeah, the next one here I think is really interesting. This is the Tano AVT2. So I'm not sure where this one is from, but the immediately striking thing about this one is that it's in a like a rack mount case.
Yeah, that's what I saw, the handles.
Yeah, so if you wanted to rack mount an Apple II clone, it looks like this is designed to do that. Now, they have it in a standalone box, but it's clearly a rack mount chassis. And in fact, they show it removed at one point in the pictures, you can see. and it's got bays for full height 5.25-inch drives in the front, and they've got real Apple II drives in it. So that's kind of interesting too. Apparently, it's designed to fit Disk 2s. I guess the Shugart chassis was probably a standard, so someone put those drives in there. But yeah, this is a very interesting one. They show it booted up, so it shows AVT2 at boot up. So they did bother to change those 5 bytes in this one at least. And you can tell they replaced the text with AVT2 AVT-2 space because the text is off centered and they needed to fill up the same amount of space in the ROM. So you can kind of tell how they did that, which is pretty amusing. This one, as of this recording, is already at $350. So this one may go for some money, but yeah, it says power's on, but unable to test further. So who knows? But it does show it running. There's no keyboard, so I don't know. Who knows what kind of keyboard this thing would need? I mean, there's no indication of what kind, if it has an external connector for a keyboard or what. So it's just a chassis with some drives in it that boots itself. But that's all we got here. Any thoughts on this one, Mike?
No, I like the design. It seems to take the design philosophy from the Franklin Ace 2100, 2200 series, where you have sort of that pizza box, a rectangle pizza box, with the separate, it's connected, but it's a standalone keyboard. It's connected by a cord, and then the drives are actually sort of mounted in the chassis itself rather than independent units like you saw with the Apple II. Sean, have you seen anything like this?
I've heard of the Tano, but I've never seen one in person. That's quite the monstrosity.
It is.
If it wasn't, I'd heard of the name Tano, and if it didn't have that associated with it, I'd almost say this was like a homebrew that somebody put together.
Well, I think Tony Diaz might have one of these. I think I've heard him talk about it. I'm amazed at the size of the capacitors and the transformer in there.
Yeah, it looks like a linear power supply built right into the chassis. So yeah, and it's not enclosed. I'm guessing this might not be entirely FCC compliant because yeah, they've got big old linear power supply parts just floating in there on the motherboard.
Well, when it's in an equipment rack, who cares?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the whole thing is in a metal chassis, so maybe it's fine. But yeah, they're not messing around with that power supply. I do kind of wonder if the drives are going to get some interference there. The power supply is jammed right up against the back of the floppy drives.
Wow, not a good decision.
I don't know how good that is, but I'm not an electrical engineer, so who knows? Maybe it's fine. But yeah, this one actually is for the seller here is Vintage Computer Museum. Sean, is that someone you see a lot selling this kind of stuff?
Yeah, that seller ID has been trying to purge quite a bit of their collection recently.
Okay.
Well, I would say recently over the past 2 years.
Okay. All right. Well, the last one on our list is one of the many aforementioned fruit-based clones, the Peach Apple II clone. This one is kind of interesting, if only for the nameplate, I guess. It says Peach, and it's kind of adorable. Unfortunately, the nameplate on this particular example is broken, so it just kind of says P. I guess they're assuming it stands for Peach, or maybe they know. But yeah, otherwise, this one's fairly nondescript as far as I can tell. It's just another clone, one-to-one clone of the Apple II Plus case with the motherboard in it, and someone slapped the name Peach on it. And do you know anything more about this one, Mike?
I don't, other than that it's, just another one of those clones that was out there before Apple really started clamping down on the ripoffs, especially the ones that just would suck down the ROM and then put it in a new box with their own label on it.
Yeah, it's interesting how many of them try to have a same length of name as well, so that they can fit it into the 8 characters for Apple Space 2 that they have to show on the boot up screen in the ROM. Yeah, is this one that you've seen, Sean? The Peach?
It looks like just so many other. I mean, some of these clones are just so much alike. They just had different names on the badges, and so I've seen versions of this. This one is probably one of the more one-to-one copies. I mean, it looks like it's a copy of a Rev 7.
Okay, interesting.
Maybe earlier. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I wonder if there was, like you're saying, all these factories in Taiwan and so forth are cranking these things out kind of like today where they do with cell phone cores, where, you can go into any street market, in Asia and buy 1,000 different cell phones, but they're all the same core. And these factories, these third shifts are just cranking out these kind of on-chip solutions for a cell phone. And then all these resellers are buying them and wrapping them in crappy plastic and reselling them. So I wonder if something similar was going on with all these Apple II clones, because someone had a tooling spooled up to, injection mold these copies of the 2 Plus case. So I'm guessing all of these companies weren't doing that. So maybe somebody was selling them the cases, or who knows.
Can you make out the date code on the RAM? Because I'm having a hard time seeing that.
No, pictures are not great.
It looks like 8247. So that'd be really late in the Apple II Plus production.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good point. Yeah, I'm guessing there might have been some delay. I imagine the 2 Plus was still viable for longer outside the U.S. Than it was here, especially in areas like South America and Bulgaria, where they had trouble importing that stuff. All right, well, I think that about wraps up our Apple II clone eBay segment.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that was kind of a fun little trip down a weird rabbit hole. We've got a couple more traditional items to talk about. One is the Personal Software Incorporated version of Zork, which is the really rare one. So this is kind of the Apple I of Zorks. So you don't see this one come up very often?
No, this is because Zork was based on Adventure, I think, which went all the way back to the PDP. There were any number of clones and things like that before, and modifications before Infocom picked it up, and one of them was Personal Software. Now, I'm not as familiar with the details of Infocom's early days. Sean, do you know anything about that interaction with Personal Software?
No.
Okay. If you're interested in early boxed software that you're not going to see that often, this was available. Looks like it was initially listed for $1,100, didn't sell, was relisted a couple of times. And is it still available? Let's see. Yep, still available for $1,100. So the relisting continues, but it's not coming down in price. Or buy it now for $1,500.
I guess if you're a really diehard Infocom collector, you might want that one. But there are certainly, later copies of Zork under the Infocom label are, of course, much, much cheaper than that, and certainly obtainable. But it's an interesting artifact, that thing.
Yep. Not as interesting as our next item.
Yeah, this one, gosh, where'd you find this one, Mike? This is an odd one. So this is the Exatron string floppy. And you'll have to help me out here. I think I've deduced from these pictures and the description that it was a tape loop storage system. Is that correct?
That's what I gathered. There's not a lot of detail given in the description to help out in the pictures. I don't know. I look at this and it almost looks like those custom cases they built today for the SD interfaces that go into Apple IIs, but this is certainly not that. Sean, have you ever seen this?
Yeah, back in the day, I saw them advertised, and they really just didn't go anywhere. They were supposed to be faster than disk drives and cheaper than hard drives, but it just wasn't a standard that caught on.
Yeah, this is, I assume, the same technology as the Sinclair QR used. I believe it was the QR. Is that right? The sort of higher end business model that they tried, and yeah, it had these things, I think they called them micro drives or something, and it was a continuous loop tape inside a little plastic thing. And they got a lot of storage on them, and they were compact, but certainly not fast, as you can imagine. At least the idea being it didn't have to rewind. It could just continuously run the tape in any direction because it's a loop. But so the mechanics of them are pretty interesting. If you Google this, you can find a picture of the inside of one of these Sinclair loop drive or tape loop devices. Pretty interesting how they work, but yeah, definitely a weird kind of idea that maybe might have had a niche, but my understanding is the Sinclair ones were quite unreliable, much like cassette tapes were. So the advantages of the loop weren't really sufficient to offset the negatives of a tape. But interesting that someone tried to make this for an Apple II.
What's nice about this particular item is that you see a lot on eBay, a lot of rare Apple II and especially Apple III items. See how I worked Apple III in there? Don't you like that?
Oh, yeah.
you'll see an item, but the interface card is missing, or the cable is broken, or there's a burned chip, or the software that you need to make it work is not there. And this thing is complete in the box. The manual's there. The manual's dated November 1980. So everything you need to make it run is there. It is a bit pricey. It's $750 buy it now. But if you're looking for those one-off or items that you just don't see much anymore, I don't know, that might be reasonable for a complete boxed copy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a collector of these obscure peripherals, I mean, this is the one to buy. It's, all the original packing foam, everything. It's complete, 100%. So, this is a fantastic example. The plastic on the device looks a little bit yellowed, but, not in decent shape, all things considered. And there's a bunch of tapes included. It looks like there's some tapes in the original shrink wrap even. So if you wanted to fire this thing up, you still could.
Oh, they're called wafers.
Oh, yeah, wafers, yeah. Which is funny because they're transparent and you can actually see the tape inside them. So whatever they try, and they call it the stringy floppy, and they're called wafers. But yeah, it's clearly a tape loop. You can see right through their own transparent plastic case.
I'd concerned the tape had kind of melted together after some stuff.
That's a good point. Yeah, the tape's probably degraded somewhat. And maybe, much like old floppies, tapes even more so because they're flexible. The ferrite tends to kind of flake off the surface when they get old. So,
good point.
Yeah, it's debatable whether this thing still works or not. But, and good luck finding new stringy floppy wafers. If you want to, I guess this thing, back in the day would have been useful for backups, I guess, probably. Like, you would use like an 8mm, DAT drive or something. But it's much beyond that. I don't know. It's a curiosity for sure. All right. Well, that's the last of our eBay, which is good because we don't actually talk about eBay on this show.
That's right.
And I've got some feedback. So why don't we roll on into that?
You've listened to us talk. Now it's time to tell us what you think.
All right, so I guess in our increasingly embarrassing corrections segment, we have to talk about the fact that last time we mentioned Kaboom several times in the context of the quadraphonic sound card, the Sonic and the 4-play multiplayer joystick card for the GS, both of which are now supported by Kaboom. I think we said probably on more than one occasion that Kaboom is by Antoine Vigneault. For some reason, we credit everything ever done on the GS to Antoine, and while he's an awesome individual, he did not, in fact, do everything for the 2GS. So yes, Kaboom was by Ninja Force, and our apologies now and for the future when we continue to make that mistake.
Wah, wah.
Yes. Once again, if it makes you feel any better, our research department has been rounded up and shot. In fact, the other day, I went down there, Mike. I don't know. Did you know this? I went down there the other day, and it was just a bunch of chimpanzees, and they were all smoking weed. So who's hiring these people? I don't understand how this is happening.
See, the monkeys can smoke weed out here. It's legal.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, they probably shouldn't, but they can. So there's that. Apologies to everyone involved for once again seemingly not knowing what we're doing. If it seems like we don't know what we're doing, it's because we in fact don't know what we're doing.
That's right.
We are clowns with microphones. All right. If you ever needed proof that the barrier to entry for podcasting is very low, here's your proof.
Here it is.
The Open Apple Podcast. All right. So we've fallen on our swords sufficiently there, I think. Moving right along. Antoine actually did also write in to tell us about the new arcade game for the Apple II called Genius from Daniel Liverani in Italy. So he's getting ready to release that. So we will link to that in the show notes. Looks like a cool new title. I think we talked about that a while back, didn't we, Mike?
Sounds familiar. Yep.
Yeah. I think when it was in early demo mode, he had posted it on the Enthusiasts Facebook group. So I think we mentioned that. But it looks like it's released now. So we will definitely dig into that.
Cool.
And let's see, we also mentioned Nox Archaist, I believe, on the last show or the one before. And it's a new Apple II RPG that's on its way. And it's got a very classic kind of Apple early Ultima look, which would look great on one of those 2 Plus clones. And it looks like they're doing some really cool technical stuff with the engine. And so he is encouraging people to go and ask them questions about it. We'll link to their workshop site again. 6502 Workshop is their company site. They have a press kit even. And interestingly, they are running a graphics contest to build some tile art for them. So I wonder if you could use the Lawless Legends tile editor for that, because it manages all the wacky bit shifting and so on. But in any case, they are running that contest now, and it wraps up the end of July. So by the time you hear this, you will still be able to participate. So we encourage everyone to do that. Go make some tiles for Nox Archaeist. Winners include getting your name as an NPC in the final game, and also getting pre-release physical copies of the game on 5¼ discs and other goodies. So we will link to all the rules and details of that contest in the show notes.
We need to have him on the show, I think.
Yeah, I think it's time. All right. Moving right along. Michael Mulhern, Australian fan of the show and the man who travels the farthest to KFest every year. He wrote in to tell us a little bit about Forsonic. They of course demonstrated it at WozFest for the first time ever in the public, and WozFest being on the Australian KFest of sorts. And we had asked sort of rhetorically on the show, how does it work without a slot? Because it can be configured to run slotless. And so Michael cleared that up for us. It's only picking up power off the slot, so it has the option to just take power from another source with a cable, and it can just kind of float in the case. I guess you'd have to find some way to secure it in that case, but I guess it attaches to chips and places various things with connectors to draw signals off of the Ensoniq and so on. So it doesn't actually need the slot except for power and some sort of physical mounting. So that's pretty cool. Looking forward to seeing that at KFest. I think someone will have one there as well. All right, let's see. The second last one maybe I've got here is, just more people running in to tell us our mistake on Kaboom. So thank you all for that. Yes, we are morons, and we acknowledge that.
We'll go feel shame.
Yes, we have many shames. Mike, that's all the feedback I have. Do you have any more?
Nothing at my end. I think everybody gave up writing to me when I started screaming at them. So, and it wasn't for corrections or anything. They were just being nice, and I yelled at them. So now they write to you.
Fair enough. And feel free to, you can all write to both of us at feedback@open-apple.net. And you can also feel free to tweet at us. Mike is at 6502 Lane, and I am at Quinn Dunkey. Those links are on our website as well if you don't want to know how to spell them or whatever. So feel free to do that, and we will see it. And that's it for feedback.
And I think that might be it for the show. Do you have anything else, Quinn?
That's all I've got. Sean, any parting shots?
Plug.
Just hope to see as many of you as we can at KansasFest this year. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'll sure be there for sure.
And, of course, check out all the latest Apple II news as it happens at a2central.com. That's Sean's website.
Hey, thanks.
Yep. And since we're plugging, I'll throw in one last plug because it's our show about my Apple IIc Plus upgraded ROM. If you're interested, if you're interested in that, I'm taking pre-orders. If you've emailed me already, you are on the list, rest assured. But feel free to email or tweet me at the aforementioned addresses, or on the KFest mailing list, and I will reserve one for you and deliver it for the special KFest price of $10. After that, the price is going up. So if you think you might ever need one or want one, now's the time, folks.
Can't beat it.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you all next month.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been the Open Apple Podcast. Subscribe to us in iTunes or visit us at open-apple.net, where you can browse our extensive catalogue of past episodes or read our blog. If you like what you've heard today, or even if you didn't, your comments, questions or ideas are always welcome. Send them to feedback@open-apple.net.
The Apple II computer is the most widely used computer ever. This Apple IIe computer with monitor, disk drive, and add-on memory card is on sale for $11.95. Buy now and you'll receive a $150 Apple rebate, bringing your cost to just $1,045. Use Apple Credit for payments as low as $50 a month. Buy now and receive a free training seminar and 6 tutorial diskettes, all at your electronic solutions and computer solution stores. Apple, Apple, Apple.